Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about Total War Warhammer 3, the Old World Custom Campaign mod. And in this particular video, I want to talk about some of the best, or rather improved areas compared to Immortal Empires. I'll start with Bretonnia. Now this of course will affect Bretonian factions as well, in a very significant way, not just Grom, who I have here selected. Because you've got all the Bretonian legendary lords close to each other. You now have provinces with multiple settlements as opposed to a lot of provinces with just 2 settlements in them. And to be honest, 2 settlement provinces aren't necessarily that great within the context of Warhammer 3. So now you have actually useful provinces throughout the entirety of Bretonnia. This makes every Bretonian campaign significantly better in Bretonnia. Lumen Leocore would suffer significantly from this. The Fey Enchantress wasn't necessarily in a much better situation, and well, Rapans and Alberic basically weren't even playing in Bretonnia. So now you have the entirety of Bretonnia arrayed against its foes. And that does genuinely improve every single Bretonian campaign, but not just the Bretonian campaigns. We also have to talk about Grom the Punch. Massive Oracle has been made into a free settlement province. You do start with a tier 2 settlement with the ability of recruiting nasty skulkers from the very beginning. Chaos Robbie, just for this alone, I love it. Because this gives you the ability of recruiting good units from the very beginning of your campaign. Something that Creative Assembly needs to understand. There's plenty of races in the game that just have a really bad start, or legendary lords that have a bad start, because they may not necessarily care about the tier 1 units. For greenskins, yeah, the tier 1 goblin archers are certainly good, but what you really want to do as greenskins is you want the King and the Warlord DLC, and you want to be able to recruit nasty skulkers. Also, this helps improve Grom's campaign overall, not because he can recruit nasty skulkers, but because he finally has a full starting province, which means growth is better, more options are available in terms of unit and hero recruitment, and it's a fairly defensible location as well. Because the only Order faction that you may be dealing with that are close enough to actually matter are the Wood Elves. Of course, there's also Dwarves, but Karak Ziffin is not really going to be a faction that you're going to have to worry about in this campaign. Also, to go even further with Bretonnia, because Bretonnia is larger, so is Loren larger, and the distance between settlements for every faction that likely ends up at war with Loren is also greater. This vastly improves the campaign dynamic for everyone that an Immortal Empire starts close to it. So you can think of Aranessa, you can think of Ikiclaw, you can think of Grom, you can think of Kemler. They no longer have to worry necessarily about facing the full wrath of Loren. Because if one of the Loren factions declares war on you in Immortal Empires, chances are all of them are going to declare war on you. And it's not great territory to deal with. Loren is certainly a powerhouse, but the fact that they can play campaigns without having to invest significant resources on taking territory, that's just not really worth it all that much to you. At least with the exception of the Great Oak is significantly better. And it's because of the improvements to Bretonnia that is mainly the case. So Bretonnia, a much better campaign area, far more interesting. It really does feel you're fighting a pretty powerful faction or a powerful race when we're thinking about the issue of Bretonnia. And you do have plenty of powerful legendary lords in the area, making the fighting over here significantly better. I'm not going to add the Empire in this video, because while I do appreciate that some of the terrain changes, I have to say, the Empire is still bad. Until Creative Assembly changes the Empire and makes fundamental changes to improve them, I can't really recommend the Empire. And the other factions, yeah, they would be fighting trash. So when you're fighting trash, it's not necessarily a fun situation either. Bretonnia is actually a better faction than the Empire in a lot of ways, especially in the crucial early game. It also helps in this mod that all of the Bretonian factions, they start with the stables. So you'll actually be seeing quite a bit of cavalry from the Bretonians from very early on in campaign, as opposed to the ridiculous masses of infantry that they would recruit in Immortal Empires, which is not accurate at all for them. Number 4, we have Kislev, and not Kislev the race, Kislev the territory, which was so terrible in Immortal Empires for a very long time that it was not even worth conquering if you're fighting against Kislev, be it as the Skaven, Norsca, Warriors of Chaos, etc. Simply because you had a bunch of provinces that didn't have provincial capitals. Now they do, but even so, they were very difficult to defend. They didn't have a lot of resources. Then you have Kislev in the old world, and suddenly things are different. While you still have a couple of provinces that only have 2 settlements, so these 2 in particular, there are plenty of provinces that the vast majority of them have suddenly become 4 settlement provinces, 3 settlement provinces. This vastly improves the dynamic that you have to deal with when you are playing a campaign as Kislev in Kislev. And it also benefits every other campaign that is in this area. Also, I do want to help it in this particular situation, because I think France's campaign is quite amusing right now with all the 9 circles of hell. Is a fantastic and far better experience than what we previously had. Like, France's campaign is improved, Catherine's campaign is improved, hell, Isaac's campaign is improved over here, because he will start in Kislev as opposed to starting in the mountains, having to make his way into Kislev. And the problem with his starting position in the mountains is you inevitably end up in a war with Ungrim. Ostankia now starts in Kislev. You've got Valkia just to the east over there. But the real benefit here, this is a campaign as Catherine. The real benefit here is, of course, for Kislev the race. And there are 3 principal issues that Kislev has. The unit roster is good, though artillery can take a while to unlock. But for the most part, it's a solid unit roster. The problem for Kislev, the problems of Kislev's, their weak economy, the invocation cost, the support, which ties together with the supporter system, but invocations costing more and more devotion as you play through a campaign. Not a great situation, not a great dynamic. And 3, the biggest issue, of course, one of the bigger issues, is with regards to the territory of Kislev. While this mod does not fix 2 of those issues, it certainly fixes Kislev. It is now a territory worth holding on to. It is now worth playing a campaign as Kislev within Kislev, as opposed to marching your ass down south to end up conquering the Empire, which is, by the way, what was the best course of action, and still is the best course of action in Immortal Empires, despite the changes that they've made. Furthermore, because Kislev is so large, you can play a significant portion of the campaign. Like, look at Catherine's situation over here. You can now play a significant portion of the campaign and have territory that has suitable climate for you. This is great. Sure, you do have Cast Wasteland to the north, but you have a vast chunk of territory to expand in without having to worry about the climate limitations. This is great. It vastly improves the race, and it vastly improves the campaigns. But on top of that, all the special Kislev cities, be it Kislev, Prague, Erengrad, they're now part of proper provinces with multiple settlements. Now, the reason this is good is, 1, you'll get more income for this. 2, you'll get more growth, so it means you will be able to build these cities up faster. And 3, you'll be able to do so cheaper, because now you can get the Tallow Keepers Guild from these cities and affect the entire provinces. So you can build these up faster, cheaper, in a significantly better fashion. It vastly improves the situation that Kislev has to deal with. Now, one of the things I would certainly like to have, and this is not a map design issue, it's a Kislev issue, I would be like to have the roads in the special Kislev cities, not instead of having the market chain, the merchant guild hall, because 50% tradable resources increase is absolutely a significant benefit that you do need, like a generic provincial capital, not a special city for. That's, by the way, one of the things that could help Kislev if they had 2 economic structures as opposed to 1, though, of course, you'd run into issues of the building slots in that respect. Or if, we could get a tier 3 version of, like, if the benefits from the roads could be put in tier 3 and the tier 5 benefit, like, just eliminate the tier 5 structure, reduce it, or just, like, Kislev's economy is so bad is you could genuinely take the caravans, move that income and tradable resource production to tier 3, And still Kislev would fall behind other races, given everything. So that's one of the things Creative Assembly could do. But as it currently stands, a campaign as Catherine, a campaign as Castalton, a campaign as Fraught, and a campaign in general in Kislev will end up being significantly better than it was before. At number 3, it is Albion. While certainly long-term potential of Albion isn't necessarily great, I do have to say that having to invade the Albion once the Thunderdome situation has been resolved one way or another is probably one of the biggest nightmares in the game, because, well, you've got Grimgor on an island with his victims. I mean, I know who's going to win this fight. You know who's going to win this fight, and it's not even going to be close. It is, of course, going to be Manfred von Karstein that's going to win this fight. What am I joking? No. Grimgor will make this his base of operations, and then he will go on a rampage of death and destruction that no one will stop him. Grimgor is a nightmare to deal with in the Mountains of Morn. Imagine putting him on an island where he has no real opposition. Well, he does have opposition, but AI Grimgor on Legendary, well, let's just say that's a completely different league altogether. And then you either start having to deal with him from the very beginning of the campaign, which is certainly a tall order, regardless of who you're playing, or you start another campaign outside of Albion, and then you have to deal with a green bastard later on in your campaign. Suffice to say, you are going to be in for an apocalyptic event. It needs an endgame crisis when you've got Grimgor in this particular campaign to deal with. Now, beyond the issue of Grimgor and how awesome he is, you do have this interesting dynamic that exists on this island. Because yes, you have Manfred and Marcus Wolfhard, which are throwaway legendary lords. Well, Marcus Wolfhard can be a bit better, but yeah, he's not the great one. Manfred is Manfred. I'm not even going to talk about that. But then you have Jan Bo, you have Grimgor, you have Malus Darkblade, you have Be'lakor. You have 4 of the most powerful legendary lords in the game, S tier each and every single one of them, in one way or another, on the same island. Things are going to be interesting over here, suffice to say. It's a great campaign to play, regardless of who you're playing, even as Nakai, Marcus Wolfhard. Just don't play Manfred, it's really screw Manfred. Freaking terrible character. But regardless of who you're playing in this particular campaign, regardless of which legendary lord you decide to go with, you are going to have an awesome time in this campaign. The climate situation isn't particularly amazing, but hey, play with the climate removal, climate penalty removal mod, and it is going to be a hell of a time. Even as Marcus Wolfhard and Manfred, it can be fairly interesting having the Thunderdome, and a real Thunderdome, where a lot of the characters present in it are very powerful legendary lords. They can more than hold their own one way or another. Which alliances are you're going to make? Who are you going to side against? Who are you going to side with? And what decisions you're going to make? Albion is awesome. It's a nice slice of gameplay for the old world map. And I love it. And also it can be very interesting having to end up dealing with the winner later on in the campaign. Some people will argue that, well, you can win the campaign over here in 20 turns because no one's going to attack you on this island. That's true, but, well, look at what you have to deal with on this island and then tell me that you don't deserve, like, overwhelming victory after... Let's say you're playing a campaign as Yombo. You're going to have to fight Grimgor, Malus, and Be'lakor. Have fun with that. Also, the Manfred is going to be Manfred, so there's that as well. Then there is Norsca, where Oxyatl and a couple of other characters have decided that they're going to make their own Thunderdome, and it is going to be awesome. So, you've got Oxyatl arrayed against Archaon, and then you've got Boris Ursus over here just southwest of Archaon. You've got a smattering of really powerful legendary lords over here. Kolek, Sigvald, Archaon, Grumbrindle, Boris, and others that make for an incredibly and awesome campaign dynamic. There's not much more to say. You've got Oxyatl fighting Archaon from very early on. That is awesome. You have the Bro Alliance, yes, I'm going to call it that, between Oxyatl, Grumbrindle, and Boris Ursus, all joining forces to do one thing and one thing alone. Smash Chaos to pieces. I kind of imagine this is the last alliance trying to prevent End Time, trying to prevent Archaon's ascension from reaching a point where he would genuinely threaten the world. And if they fail, the world is doomed. Because, well, if they fail, Archaon just ends up obliterating every single person that stands in his path. It makes for a much better campaign for Archaon to actually have powerful Legendary Lords that he has to deal with from early on. Because in the Immortal Empires, basically, the only challenge you might have the entire campaign is potentially Boris versus his army early on, very early on. But you can cheese your way to victory. Enjoy doing that against Oxyatl. That's not going to be quite as easy, I would say. So it is a great campaign dynamic that you do have here in Norsca. Basically, you can kind of central Norsca, if you will, between these characters. Many choices, many shifting alliances. I mean, hell, you've got fucking Cetra and Eastern Norsca just coming here to obliterate the Norscan tribes for daring to insult his honor by stealing his crown. He's here for payback, for one thing and one thing alone, payback, and he doesn't care who's going to stand in his way. Also, you've got Daniel because, well, every map needs its victim, and I guess Daniel is the victim over here, the guy who's going to be obliterated by all the other Legendary Lords that are significantly more powerful and significantly better than he is. Also, interesting twist over here that as Oxyatl, you're basically going to start a war with Azazel, because, yeah, Azazel is just going to get the Monolith of Flesh, make the Vark his vassals, and you're like, well, okay, fair enough. How about this? You surrender the Varg, and I don't annihilate you, Azazel. Who knows, maybe Azazel would enjoy that, being who he is. So it's a great campaign for all of these characters, be it on the Forces of Order or Forces of Chaos. Great campaign dynamics that you have. Well, unless you want to play Daniel. But to be fair, even Daniel, believe it or not, even fucking Daniel has a better campaign. Because Daniel is undivided, right? That's how his control is affected. Well, he now starts a war with the Acelings, so he can get a good amount of territory to entire provinces without any opposition from anyone, and yeah, he'll obliterate them. He'll actually be able to play to have an economy this time around, and without too much hassle. Of course, then he has to deal with Grombrindal, Oxyatl, and potentially Boris, and also Cetra coming in from the east, but you know, those are just details. At least you have a less miserable start than in Immortal Empires. Yeah, Old World is so awesome that I'm even considering looking at this map to play a Daniel campaign. It's still probably a very, very bad idea in a lot of ways to do it, but this is certainly a lot more compelling than his starting position in Immortal Empires. Says a lot about Immortal Empires. And then finally, at number 1 is Karak 8 Peaks. The first time Karak 8 Peaks has been realized in video game form. In free games. The first time that we've actually been able to play this rather significant event in the lore, or rather not so significant, but pretty damn awesome. You had this three-way war between the dwarves, the greenskins, and the Skaven. You had a bunch of interesting characters like Belikar, Skarsnik, and Queek. Well, Skarsnik is less interesting, in the games at least. He's still got problems, but just having a campaign where you have a genuine war for 8 Peaks, where 8 Peaks is such an important and powerful area of the campaign map that it overshadows all others. You have a territory that's littered with landmarks all over the place. And while some of them are certainly not necessarily as significant as others, a lot of them are actually quite damn good that you can have over here. So the campaign dynamic, how a campaign will feel playing this in this area. Even if you're not playing one of these 3 characters, like let's say you're playing Gorst and you decide to go for 8 Peaks, or play Drazov, who's an awesome character, and go for 8 Peaks, your campaign experience will be substantially improved by engaging with Karak 8 Peaks. For every single character, hell, Teklas can make a play for the mountain for all we know. It is much improved, it is significantly better, it adds weight to this element, which it should have. Like, not having Karak 8 Peaks just be a settlement and a couple of settlements, I always wondered how you could do Karak 8 Peaks, because of course a lot of it is underground. Well, let's just make a bunch of mountains with settlements on the map and make the map design in such a way that you do have some strong defensive positions, but whoever is trying to conquer this map is going to have to worry about the dynamic. Because, like, let's say you want to eliminate Skarsnik, well, even with the underway, you have to leave yourself vulnerable to attacks from Queek if you're playing Belegar. wonderful campaign dynamic, wonderful campaign, just great situation that Cast Robbie has done over here with Karak Peaks. If there is any particular criticism, I would like for the Fulfill Grudge to not be in one settlement that Skarsnik is basically going to take in 1-2 turns and more being Karak, but that would be about it. And really, that's a minor criticism in the best scenario. You can certainly play Belagar even with the 50% upkeep downside that you have. I wonder if there's mods that remove it, because I do dislike that. And really, all these campaigns, Queek, Skarsening, and Belagar, are vastly improved as a result of it. Like, just as Grimgor, or whoever wins Albion, becomes one of the most dominant and most powerful factions in the game, whoever wins this war is going to be an incredibly powerful faction. It could be Belagar, it could be Skarsenik, it could be Queek. Imagine playing a Disorder faction or the Cast Dwarves, and suddenly you come up against the wall of Belagar controlling all of Karak Peaks. Yeah, that is going to be something. See, this is the thing that I love about Old World. It helps just because of its design, just because of its map design. It creates situations where you're going to end up with very powerful factions on the campaign map that are not going to be so easy to defeat, which means the mid-game, late game are going to be better. And also because the distances between settlements, you're not just going to be able to go from battle to battle to battle to battle in every single turn, earning a significant amount of money and experience. So you end up weaker, the AI becomes stronger, but without the bullshit cheats that we saw in Warhammer 2. Because that's one of the things I disliked about Warhammer 2 immensely. The AI wasn't good in Warhammer 2. It just cheated significantly more than it did in Warhammer 3. Here, the AI becomes stronger and really showcases what it can do. Like, I've played campaigns here where, like, Skarsenik of all people, had like 6 full stacks of troops. Damn, imagine dealing with that. It is an experience having to fight that, is all I can say. And I do hope the developers, the Cast Robbie and the others that are working on this, continue improving this, because there's so much incredible potential with this map, it's not even funny. Maybe Belagar should start, by the way, with the West Death Pass, so he can, and with having an Ogre fight over here, so he can march directly on Karak Peaks as opposed to dealing with Black Crag. But that's just me, right? That's just my perspective. We'll like some improvements with respect to this, but in like West Death Pass is kind of annoying as a province, just my perspective, because like it creates, there's a couple of issues, but for the most part, incredible campaigns over here for all of them. Costin signing out. Stay tuned for more.